So today we're going to look at pathogens. Now, pathogens can be described as a disease-causing organism. They can be passed on from one host to another, and therefore the diseases that they cause are known as transmissible diseases. Now, pathogens can be classified as a few different types of organisms. The first being bacteria, then also viruses, then fungi, protozoa, and lastly worms. Now, a good example of a pathogen that is bacterial is the TB or tuberculosis pathogen. Now, this is caused by a bacterium with the name Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It most commonly affects the lungs, but can also affect other parts of the bodies like the kidney, the spine, or the brain. Then we have viruses, and a good example is HIV or AIDS. Now, if you don't know what the difference is, HIV stands for the pathogen. It's the human immunodeficiency virus. And AIDS is the disease that it causes. It's the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. Now, this virus attacks the body's immune system, specifically the CD4 T cells. We'll learn a bit more about these cells later on. Now, HIV weakens the immune system by destroying these cells. Then over time, as the immune system becomes weaker, the body becomes more vulnerable to infections and certain cancers. Now, if you don't treat HIV, it can lead to AIDS, which is the most advanced stage of HIV infection. For fungi, we have ringworm. Now, this is a common fungal infection of the skin. It's not caused by a worm, even though the name suggests it. Now, the medical term for ringworm is tinea, and it can affect different parts of the body, most commonly the feet. So this is caused by dermatophytes, a group of fungi that feeds on keratin. Now, keratin is a protein that's found in our hair and our skin and our nails. Now, the infection forms red circular rashes that is often itchy and scaly. For protozoa, we have malaria, which is a disease that's caused by a parasite from the genus Plasmodium. Now, these are spread to humans through the bites of infected female Anopheles mosquitoes. They're caused by Plasmodium parasites specifically. Now, the most dangerous species is the Plasmodium falciparum and the Plasmodium vivax. It's important that you know these two species. Now, when the mosquito bites a person, the parasite will enter the bloodstream and travel to the liver, where it then multiplies. It then re-enters the blood and infects red blood cells, causing different symptoms. Lastly, we're going to look at worms. Now, it's very important to remember that not all worms cause disease, meaning that not all worms are pathogenic. Now, the group that causes the most disease is from the flatworm group or Plathelmintes. Now, for today's example, we're going to look at the tapeworm. Now, this is a parasitic flatworm that lives in the intestines of humans or animals. It can grow several meters long inside the host digestive system. Now, the tapeworm infection is usually caused by eating raw, undercooked meat, especially pork, beef, or fish that contains the tapeworm larvae or eggs. Sometimes it's also through contact with infected feces. So this is through poor hygiene or contaminated water. These little worms can cause abdominal pain, nausea, diarrhea, or even constipation, weight loss, and visible segments of the worm in your stool can be seen. Now, all of these are examples of transmissible diseases, meaning that they can be passed from one host to the other. A question that we need to get answered is how these pathogens are spread from one host to another. Now, the first method is through air droplets, and this is very common in viruses like the common cold, influenza, and COVID-19. Another method is through food or water. Examples of diseases that are spread through food and water is, for instance, cholera, typhoid, dysentery, and hepatitis A. Then, of course, diseases can also be transmitted through touching surfaces that have pathogens on them. Salmonella is a good example of a disease that is spread through surfaces. Athlete's foot is also spread in this manner. And then diseases can also be transmitted through insect bites. And this is like malaria and dengue fever, but also African sleeping sickness. Now, there are several ways that we can control the spread of the disease. The first way is through clean water supply. Now, the safe drinking water ensures water is free from pathogens, which will prevent waterborne diseases like cholera. Then we can also have hygienic food preparation. So this is like washing hands with soap, or correct food cooking methods, and also hygienic preparation of food. This will help to prevent contamination of food with harmful bacteria as well as fungi. Good personal hygiene, like washing your hands with soap or using tissues to catch sneezes and coughs, and then also disposing of them, will reduce the transmission of diseases such as colds and flu. We've also learned all of this in the COVID-19 pandemic. Then we also need proper disposal of waste. Like food waste will reduce the prevalence of pests, like flies, that can act as vectors for transmissible diseases. So by disposing of waste in a proper manner, we can reduce the spread of different diseases. Then we have sewage treatment as well. So the treatment of sewage removes harmful pathogens from the waste before it's released into the environment. This will reduce the risk of diseases spreading in contaminated water. Some countries even reuse sewage water. This is where it's very important to get rid of harmful pathogens before redistributing it to the public. Now, even if we use all the correct control measures for disease not to spread, diseases can still get into our body through pathogens. Now, our body has three main ways in which it defends itself against diseases. It has mechanical, chemical barriers, as well as cells. Now, our mechanical barriers include our skin, which covers almost all parts of our body to prevent infection from pathogens. So if a cut or a graze occurs, it immediately begins to heal itself, often by forming a scab. Another mechanical barrier is the hairs in our nose. These make it difficult for pathogens to get past them further up the nose so that they're not inhaled into the lungs. Now, chemical barriers include things like mucus. Now, these are made in various places in the body. Pathogens will get trapped in the mucus and can then be removed from the body either by coughing or blowing on nose or even swallowing. We then also have stomach acid, which is a chemical barrier. Now, stomach acid contains hydrochloric acid, which is a very strong acid. So strong, it can kill any pathogen that have been caught in the mucus in the airways and then swallowed, or have been consumed in food or water. Lastly, we have our cells. Now, we have different types of white blood cells that work to prevent pathogens from reaching areas of our body they can replicate in. Now, firstly, these cells can kill pathogens by phagocytosis. Now, this is when the cells engulf and digest the pathogenic cells. Cells can also produce antibodies, which clump pathogenic cells together so that they can't move easily. This is called agglutination. They can also release chemicals that signal other cells that they must be destroyed, like phagocytes that can then carry out phagocytosis.